This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Last week, we kit bashed 2 orc trucks out of one of the official model kits and a bunch of stuff from the dollar store. And today, we're finally going to start painting them. I started out by priming both the trucks and the truck crew in black, and then giving them an overspray of Pro Acryl Mahogany, which is a really warm, dark red-brown color. I like to start out all of my orcs and orc vehicles with this color because it makes a great base coat for rusty metal, but also it works great for a lot of the orc clothing, and even for orc skin, a slightly dark red color makes a great undercoat. Next, to make all the bright colors that I want to add later pop even more, I undercoated any areas I might want to be bright colors later with titanium white. I like doing this at this stage because really early on it forces me to think about contrast on a model and creating a nice balance of dark and light areas. After this, it was time to start applying those bright colors, so I started out with yellow. The color scheme for my orc army is the traditional red and yellow of the Evil Sunz orc subfaction, so I think it's smart to apply the yellow first because when we apply the red after this, red is a more opaque, intense color, so it easily can cover up the yellow, but if we did the inverse, if we did the other way around, it is much, much harder to get a bright looking yellow if we apply that over top of a red, as yellow paint is often really transparent. At first, I thought I should be more selective and carefully just paint the areas I want to be yellow, but then I remembered I like to give all the models in this army a more subtle spray of yellow from above to finish them all off. I do this to make them look just a little bit warmer, like they're covered in either sunlight or fungal dust. So I just did the same thing here, spraying a ton of yellow, even adding some over the mahogany areas. I did the same thing with the crew while I had the paint in my brush, and my thinking here is we can apply a blue or green wash over these later to get a nice green skin tone quickly and easily. I then sprayed my favorite red of all time, Bold Pyrrole Red, on any parts I wanted to be red. And as I'm doing this, I'm also kind of cleaning up the yellow application. I'm trying to almost frame the yellow elements within the red. I do this to make sure red always feels like the more dominant color, with yellow being the accent color. When applying the red to the model, I hit this one point where I made this mistake, but really it was a happy accident, as I decided to turn this into a whole polka dot camo color scheme thing on certain areas of the orc truck bed, which I think fits the whole bright red sun theme of this army quite well. I also added some red elements to each of the truck crew members as well with my airbrush. Okay, so this is as far as we got today. We've got our trucks. We've got all the main colors laid down. They're definitely not anywhere near done, but I think they are done enough to play some games with them. It is 2 days later now. Yesterday, I got to try out one of these trucks in a game. I had a lot of fun, and I'm super glad to have some vehicles for my orcs. It makes a huge difference. Unfortunately, something I did not expect was that my vehicles accumulated a lot of battle damage afterwards. I had a lot of paint scratching off, as well as a few bits falling off. So as someone said in the comments of the previous video, I probably should have used some sandpaper to sand down the surfaces on these plastic toys before priming them, just to give the primer something to attach to. It's not a huge deal. I'm gonna repair these with some super glue and some brush on primer, but just so you know, if you're doing something similar, you might want to use some sandpaper to sand down those cheap toys so that they have something a little bit easier to attach to. So I'm going to quickly do some repairs to my trucks, and then we're going to continue on with the painting. Our next step is going to be adding a skin wash to these guys. And like I said before, I'm just going to add a variety of turquoises and greens to vary them all up a bit. So I've just picked 3 different speed paints. We've got a traditional sort of orc green, We've got a sort of bluish cyan color, and we've got a brownish yellow color. And we're going to thin each of these down about 50-50 with speed paint medium. You could, of course, use any sort of transparent paints for these. I just have a lot of speed paints. We'll mix these together. It's pretty much how you would use any wash or speed paints. You can use as little or as much as you would like. And there we go. Quick and easy goblin / orc skin. For this one, we'll go with the sort of brownish yellow skin tone. It looks really good over the teeth, especially. So this one kind of preserves some of the yellowish tone while giving us some nice shading. And there we go. We'll add some highlights onto this guy later. Finally, we'll try the cyan wash, which will give us a slightly more bluish skin tone. But mixed with the yellow, it should come out somewhat more greenish. There we go. Quick and easy base tone for some orc skin. If we want to, we can also mix a few of these together. You could use a different speed paint for each orc if you want. You could experiment. You could put some reds in here. Some pinks, I think, would look cool too. But I think most of the skin tones that I like to do for orcs have a base of yellow. So I think having the starting point be that bright yellow works pretty well. And it looks better than straight up using a speed paint or a contrast paint, but it still gives you some of the efficiency that you want from those types of paints. And yeah, if we want, we could mix a few different colors together. Here, like I put the brown on here. Maybe we want to bring a little bit of that green back. Dab some green on there. Why not? Kind of mixing the two colors together on the surface. One of the other nice things I like about the speed paint medium is I think it has a drying retarder in it, so it slows things down a little bit. So you can do this thing where you can mix the colors on the surface of the model, which looks good. There we go. Okay, so we'll let those dry, and while we're doing that, we can move on to the, I think I'm going to start by dry brushing the vehicles. It's a nice easy step, which I think will have a huge impact. But first, do you know what else is like the thing I was just talking about? That's right, it's this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website and hosting platform for all of your website needs, and it's super easy to use. Start out by picking one of their fantastic pre-made templates, and then you can customize things to your heart's content. And of course, there's no coding required. It's all just dragging and dropping things to arrange them on your screen, or selecting things from a menu of different options, picking the one you like best. It's great if you want a blog or a gallery of your painted miniatures. It's also great if you want an online store. You can sell pretty much anything you want between physical items, digital items, services, memberships. They've pretty much got you covered no matter what you want to sell. And they've also got a lot of different payment options already pre-built in for you to use. So if you need a website, why not check out squarespace.com today for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Dana Howl for 10% off your very first purchase of a website or domain. And now back to our video. So I think the next stage is going to be, I was going to dry brush some metallics over all of this, but I have an idea that maybe we should dry brush some pure black over top of it first to give that sort of chipped metal look. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. When you do this, sometimes you get this aged metal look. So it kind of looks a little dirty. It looks a little worn down. Looks really cool over the bullet holes and battle damage. Looks like we got a little scratch. Whenever a scratch happens, I'm actually thinking I might just add little bits onto it, so it's sort of like a living vehicle. The more damaged it gets, the more the orcs patch it up, and it can be sort of a living art piece. You can see, especially on these big wide areas, it really helps break all of this one big shape up into multiple shapes, multiple pieces of metal that have been bolted together. It's amazing what a difference it makes, just a quick black dry brush to make something look aged and metallic. We compare this to this and you really see the difference. I've actually got an idea. So I just was cleaning up the primer here, and I thought instead of just adding a second coat of primer, why don't we just dry brush this black on here? Instead of just regular paint, we can add a few streaks, a little bit more visual interest than just the normal dry brush. So with all the black dry brushing complete, the next step I think I'm going to do is a more selective dry brush with some metallics. For applying metallics on my orcs, I like to use some kind of a silver and some kind of a copper color. It doesn't have to be these two, but I like to vary it up between a more silvery color and more of a coppery color, just to give a little bit of variety. With these metallics, I like to go for a more subtle application. I don't want things to look too shiny or new, but yeah, just like a little bit like that is usually good. So just anywhere that I want a slightly more metallic look, we just brush on a little bit of metallic paint. So we can apply this to like any of the like exposed metal, these chains. I also kind of like, you dry brush on top of a part that's already been dry brushed with black, and it really looks like the paint's just rubbing off and there's metal underneath. So that can be a cool effect too. I love hitting the edges of things that are painted, so it really feels like this is painted red and there's a little bit of metal underneath. I love that look. We can start bringing in some copper elements as well. It adds a nice amount of variety. I feel like copper also especially looks good with warmer red and yellow colors. I feel copper can look quite nice. You can also add metallics to the individual crew. Dry brush it on. We can clean it up later. And if you ever add too much metallics, like I think this is a little too shiny, we can just dry brush. We can just bring the black dry brush back. Dull things down a little bit. Sometimes I feel like if something looks a little too shiny, it doesn't quite fit with what I would expect an orc truck to look like. Yeah, so that's a bit better. I feel like the metallics are looking good, and I want to add some weathering, some rust and things like that. Before we do that, I'm thinking the yellow is not as bright as I would like it to be. So I'm just going to touch up all the yellow areas really quickly. So for the specific yellow that I've used on the rest of this army, it's a 2-stage process. It takes a little bit longer than just painting on a single coat of yellow, but I think it looks a lot better. So basically what I do is I'll paint on yellow ochre, which is a slightly duller yellow, but it has really good opacity. And then I will do a second coat over top of that with this really intense yellow, golden yellow, which has really poor opacity, but really, it's a really, really vibrant yellow. So I'm just going to go through all the yellows that I want to be brighter, and I'm going to give them a coat of this one, and then I'm going to give them a coat of that one. So I spent quite a lot of time touching up all of the yellow areas, and I touched up a lot of the red areas as well. Mostly just any areas the airbrush was a little too imprecise to hit. I did the same thing with any areas I wanted to look metallic. I painted them black and then added a little bit of metallic paint on top. This took quite a lot of time to do, so I also took breaks to add little details to the truck crew, adding little bits of mahogany to their clothing, adding yellow to their teeth or their eyes, things like that. So the next step before we add any weathering, I think, is going to be adding any decals we might want to add. Usually I skip this step. You know, in the past I've used those stamps from Goblin Hobbies. I think those work well, but they don't have any Evil Sunz specific decals like I have here. So I thought maybe this is a good chance to try out some water slide decals, as believe it or not, I've never used these before on any of my Warhammer models, at least to my knowledge. I always just save them, but I have an excess of the Orc one now, so I figure maybe this is a good time to use a few on some of the blank spots on the trucks. Okay, so I just watched a video on how to do this properly, and I'll link the video in the description in case you want to see this source, but apparently this is how you're supposed to do it. So first things first, we take our decal, and we let it soak here for a few seconds. Nice and wet. And then we're going to just leave it here for about 30 seconds is what the channel told me to do. Okay, so now that it's a little bit damp, apparently the way this works is you hold it with your, at least according to the video I found, you hold it with your tweezers, and then using a Q-tip, apparently it just slides. Oh, hey, that works really well. Okay, just slides right off. That worked way better than my first attempt. That's cool. And according to the video and other videos I've seen, there's some products you can get to make this a little bit easier, but for today I think we're just going to, once we've applied all the decals that we want, I'm just going to apply some matte varnish on top, I think, before adding weathering. So I'm just going to add a bunch of these until it feels like it looks the way I want it to, and then we will resume our weathering. So I spent about an hour adding a ton of decals to these two trucks. I was really surprised at just how easy it was and how much detail and life it brought to the vehicles. And this whole process definitely convinced me to use more decals on my models in the future. Beyond this, I affixed all of the Ork truck crew to their respective vehicles. With the Orcs, I was able to just use poster putty so they can be removable for games like Space Gits, where we might want these to exist on the battlefield without pilots. But for the goblins, I unfortunately needed to use super glue to affix them to the trucks, as they were just too small and fiddly. And with all this complete, there's only one step remaining, and that is weathering. I know I've said that several times. But before I did that, I didn't want any of the decals to fall off, so I thought I'd give them a coat of matte varnish. And just for fun, I thought I would add a color filter to the matte varnish by adding in a bit of yellow speed paint to the mixture. And this worked, I think, really well. It gave everything this golden yellow feel that, in combination with the warm red, really reminded me of the classic McDonald's colors. So I actually ended up applying a coat of this over all of the yellow areas, not just the parts with decals. And I even applied this over a few red areas just to add some of that warmth. After this, the first color I wanted to add for weathering was this blue-green color that we see on all of my Orcs bases. In my lore, all of my Orcs hail from this sort of toxic fungal zone on the local planet, which tints all of the soil this color. So I wanted to represent that on the wheels of the vehicles as well, to tie in with the rest of the army. So mixing this color with some matte medium, I used it like a wash, trying to get it to stick into the crevices of the wheels, as well as a few places on the lower halves of the truck where I thought it might get caught or gather. I also dry brushed this onto a few places to show it sticking to surfaces of the wheels as well. And then to help better match the bases of my other orcs, I also added a light dusting of lime green to the wheels, as well as using a more watered down version like a wash in select areas of the wheel wells to show just that hint of fungal slime getting caught in the machinery. In areas where I thought the wheels looked a bit too colorful after adding all these colors, I then dry brushed a little bit of black on top. And as a final step, I used an orange-brown color to add small patches of just traditional normal rust into any areas on the vehicles where I thought rust might accumulate. And with that, our 2 orc trucks are complete, and we end the first chapter of our Orky Kit Bash vlog series. But it's not the end, as there are so many more orcs left to kit bash, so many orky vehicles and terrain left to build, and Orktober is right around the corner. So stay tuned. We'll have more orc vlogs coming soon, and thank you so much for all of your support and for watching these vlogs and cheering me on in the comments. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.